You got that in your notes already? These are the functions that I made up last time that I had nothing worked out for. That'll work. A couple of things to note. One slight difference from the graph from last time, that if I am going to use that function, negative 2p minus 20, technically it wouldn't be an origin intercept. But if you still want to just fill in on your graph from last time, it's totally fine. It's not going to affect any of our areas whatsoever. So if you don't want to draw the whole thing over, I understand. But just kind of keep that in mind, you know, that one would not start at the origin. So if you have a model where you're asked to plot everything, just be careful there. All right, so what should we do first? Well, before we do anything, let's get some pre-tax stuff, right? So let's find PE and QE. All right, so we've got 3p equals 120. 40 and 60? Yep, perfect. So I've got equilibrium price at 40, equilibrium quantity at 60. Now let's go ahead and put a tax into our model. Let's just say that t is equal to 2. Now remember, we had established rules last time, right? We can't just say, all right, 2, let's add 2 to everything. We can't do it. Instead, we say there's a new supply equation. We've got to formulate a new supply curve based on the rules last time. And remember, our rule was P goes to P minus T in its equation. So for our supply curve, we would have quantity supplied is equal to 2 times P minus 2 minus 20. Again, this is important. I mentioned it a little bit last time, but then there were some questions in the next hour that really made me emphasize it more. This P right here is not our equilibrium price that we found before. This P is based on the new supply curve, and you'll notice it is not at $40, so we can't do anything with that. We have to resolve. Okay, so I'm going to distribute this through, and I get QS is equal to 2P minus 4 minus 20, or 2P minus 24. I can now solve for my new equilibrium point E by setting my new supply equation, the one with the tax, that's just what the little t means, equal to my original demand equation. And solve for PET and QET. A little bit more space, I think. So when I set those two equal to each other, I have 3P equals 124. That is a price of $41.33. Everything's low enough, hopefully, for everyone to see. So I can go ahead and fill in PET, and now again, I do know something. I know how much of the tax per unit my consumers pay. They pay $1.33 of the tax. Mathematically, if you're not sure where that came from, I just did PET minus PE. Okay, so that also tells me a couple of other things. It's a $2 tax. I now know how much producers pay. If consumers are paying $1.33 of it, that tells me that this distance right here has to be the difference in what's left of the tax, 67 cents. So producers pay 67 cents of the tax. So I know that distance as well. I also now have a value for point G. The tax was $2, right? We know that this distance is the total amount of the tax. So if 41.33 is up here, I should be able to subtract $2 and get a value for point G. So that gives me 39.33. Okay, so let's see, one more thing that we can quickly calculate and find out, QET. I can plug my price back into either of my two equations. Just be careful, not my original supply equation, because that's not the line we're using. You have to either plug it into QST or to the demand equation, because the demand didn't change. So I'm going to just plug it into the demand equation because I can do that probably easier in my head, hopefully. QET is 58.67. Yeah. I plugged in this number right here. PET to get QET. That was to get the QET value. I got this 39 by just saying the tax is $2, so I know that this distance has to be 2. So I just subtracted 2 from that. That's all. Is that good? Makes sense? Anyone else not know where I got any of the numbers on the board? Everyone's good? Good. Now we can start finding some areas. Excuse me. So there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. There's some really easy areas, I think, that we can calculate right off the bat. For example, we can calculate the government tax revenue. Remember, we said they get the tax for every unit produced. That's how we defined it yesterday. They get the tax for every unit produced. It was that, rectangle PETEFG. But in terms of mathematically, I think it's easier just to say if they get the tax for each and every unit, we would just take the tax times QET. They get $2 for every unit up to 58.67 because that's how many are made. So 2 times 58.67. That one I may not be able to do in my head.
Am
I off by a little?
Yeah, 34.
What is it?
117.34.
34? I'm off by a penny. Sorry. Hey, technically, wouldn't that be 6666 repeating? To make that, see? I think I might be on. So 117.34. So I can find that out right away. Another one I could find actually really easy is deadweight loss. Because if you remember deadweight loss, this triangle here that I'll do in pink right now, look at that distance from E to F. It's the same as this distance right here from PET to G, which is the amount of the tax. What about the height of our triangle? Kind of this distance right here, which is the same as this distance right there. So we actually, again, have kind of a formula for deadweight loss. We could say it's a triangle, so we still have to have that 1/2. The base was our tax. The height was the loss in production, or QE minus QET. So again, I can fill this in. 1/2, the tax was 2, that's great, those are going to cancel. And my loss in production, so in this case, deadweight loss, 1.33.
Is it a coincidence that it's equal to consumer tax?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because I'm using numbers that I can calculate in my head. If we wanted to, I'm not going to work this one out because we've done it before. I want to go on to another method here. We could also find the loss areas, right? This is the exact same way we would find that loss area from the price control. So we could say, okay, look, it makes a rectangle that's, 1.33 times 58.67. I could combine that with, oh, look, it makes a triangle. 1/2, 1.33 times 1.33. Right, so we can also still find those loss areas just like we found with price controls. Are there any questions on our kind of our mathematical view? Okay, then I have a question for you. There is a mistake on the board. Oh, you don't have to, Madison's like, oh my God, you turned your notebook. It's not one that you have to scratch out all your notes for. It was an intentional mistake. There's a mistake on the board. What is it, CJ?
Is it point G being 39.33?
Nope. There is a mistake though. No one? All right, let's see if we can find it then. Take these, just pass them down. One for each person.
Oh.
You can work with someone too, and then I'll have to explain what we're doing, so don't worry. I gave them all out, so I need to let one of these get to me here. Pull an extra. Okay, so these are coming down. Turn it to the one that just says number 1. Suppose the government imposes a per unit tax of $15 on sellers. So whenever, that's a production tax, we're shifting the supply curve. Whenever you look at this little grid here, you'll notice that every 2 boxes is 10, so every box is 5. So a $15 tax, 3 boxes, right? So I want you to find a little bit of information on here. What can I erase? I'll erase this stuff for a second. Here's what I want you to find. I want you to find, let's see, PE and QE. That should be pretty easy because you should just be able to look at that. Then I want you to find PET and QET. You should be able to look at that too after you make your supply curve movement. Then I want you to find, how about tax revenue? How about the per unit paid by the consumer? And the per unit paid by the producer? And how about deadweight loss? Okay, so again, each block is $5, right? We know that the tax does what to the supply curve? Shifts it how? Right? By what amount? Remember, at each Q it does what? At each Q, it moves it up by exactly the amount of the tax. So find some Qs that look kind of convenient. I like to do corners of where the supply curve goes through a corner. Move it up 3 blocks. One thing too, just kind of, it's very hard to make this on PowerPoint and make every single grid line up. So just kind of, you can round a little. Round to like the nearest, I don't know, $5, and what are my units? 25 units. So if it's right in the dead center of a block, don't sit there and try to be like, oh, well that could be 13.3, or that could, call it 15. All right, so take a minute, let's see where you get to. Step 1, right, everyone's on the first side. Step 1, move that supply curve. You should be able to fill out the first 4 things I'm looking for right away. Some of the bag over here. Uh-oh. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't like left here or something. Perfect. If anyone's speeding through, you can go ahead and start on the back because we're going to do the back after it. So yeah, if you finish the first side, turn to the back side, you'll notice it says the exact same thing, $15 tax on sellers. So everything's the same, just I think your PE and QE start different. Okay.
This customer just had 240.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah.